babes, we're about to get to the root of what's going on with our relationship with money on a fun adventure with your inner children. Now, this is going to be from a client's perspective. I have sessions that I offer. They're called New Income Levels. And basically what I do is a shamanic journey of soul retrieval, where I'm going into your energy field and figuring out how your inner children are perceiving money, because that's probably different than you as an adult. And we need to give them different tools and techniques. And oftentimes it's not about sifting through all this trauma that they have already experienced. It's more, hey, let's look at this in a different perspective, and can we do it in a really whimsical way? And that can be exactly what they need to help you create forward movement in the here and now. So you're going to want to save this video so you can come back to it later. Even though this is for a client and her inner children, if your inner children have the same root things going on, it's going to help you as well. And it's going to open up the channel lines of communication to your Akashic record, so you can perceive different versions of yourself throughout history. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So when I went into her energy fields, I heard the words alligator stew. I said, what? I said, no. We want to cook stew with an alligator. I said, okay, that sounds delicious. And I'm going to be reading from my notes here. So we all went into a kitchen and put on cooking aprons, and the alligator walked in on its two hind legs like a human would be, and we handed it also an apron. Alligators in shamanism represent finding groundedness through processing your emotions, because they're land and water animals. I said, what do y'all want to cook today? Obviously we're cooking the stew, but what else would y'all like to cook? And they said a strawberry pie. I said, oh, that sounds great. Why did you pick strawberries? Because we could pick anything, blackberries, blueberries, but they picked strawberries. So her higher self told me that strawberries have a significance in her life, either from childhood or adulthood, and maybe for you as well. And that might be some time on your own figuring out what that means to you. But the inner children said strawberries remind us of the sweetness of life. So, okay, since we're talking about money today, do you think the alligator represents money? And they said, yes, with its big smile. You know, when an alligator opens its mouth, it's got all its teeth. I said, the teeth don't scare you, because most people or kids would be scared of an alligator. And they said, just because something has teeth doesn't mean it's going to bite you. Just because something has teeth doesn't mean it's going to bite you. And I said, words of wisdom. I said, how do you think that applies to money? And they said, just because it feels scary doesn't always mean that it is. Just because it feels scary sometimes doesn't mean that it always is. I said, where did you learn that money is scary? Because obviously that was running in her energetic system. We have had some central nervous system reactions throughout childhood and adulthood, and maybe you have too. And her inner child said, I hear it in the way people speak. This is when a carousel appeared and her and I were standing in the middle of it, and we saw all of these people that were walking around the carousel. We were looking at memories of parents, teachers, caregivers, social media, family members, friends, who were all speaking about money in fearful ways. It was causing a lot of anxiety, and she had ingested that over the years. The carousel of memories. I said, oh, let's get off this ride. It's making me nauseous. And so her and I were behind the carousel now, observing it and what was happening. All of these people on the carousel with one another. I said, do you see the cycle that people are caught in? They are going around and around and around with a lack mentality. I said, why do you think that we were able to get off of the ride? And she said, because I know I have choice. I said, that's fantastic. Okay, that's the first step of saying, you know what? I don't have to participate in that. I said, why don't you put these on? She said, what are they? I said, they're magic glasses. Kind of like you would put sunglasses or reading glasses on. And when she put them on, she said, whoa, because what we were perceiving is adults on the carousel. But when she put the glasses on, everybody turned into their inner child form, where all of this lack mentality started in the first place. And that can be seen as representative, like in the school system, especially in like the United States, of being programmed to be production workers. They are enticed to the carousel and they get stuck on it, and then they become adults on the carousel. And her little girl looked at me and said, why was I able to get off? Obviously she knew because she had choice, but there's something else that's going on there. And I said, because you are a guardian, you are a guide. And this is when she put on these wizardly clothes and had this big staff. And it was really funny because the clothes were like way too big, and it was this massive staff because it was meant to be for an adult, but she was still a child wearing them. And I said, you have experienced this before. You remember. I said, come with me. So we're walking and we come up to a temple. And when we go inside, in the middle of the room, there is a fountain. The fountain of memories. So if you take your finger and you put it in the water, you will be able to see. This is when her and I were taken to ancient Egypt, and we were hiding in this closet, is what I would say it was. And that was letting me know that there was something ooky spooky scary going on outside of the closet. And I reminded her, hey, I'm here with you. Nothing's gonna happen. We're just looking at memories right now. Okay. We walk out of the closet outside, and what was happening was a lot of oppression via resources. So food and water or shelter being taken from the majority of people. And this is when we were looking at what we would quantify as a past life. I like to call them different timelines. I said, you were a rebellion leader in Egypt. People were hoarding resources, but there wasn't actually a lack of resources. It was an ideology ingrained into society. You helped set this group of people free. So there's a group of like 10 or 15 people that she had been able to help liberate. You are a philosopher of the time. I said, why do you think that you were able to do this back there in Egypt? And she said, because I remembered. I said, yes, this is a part of your genetic makeup. And if you're listening to this, I'm talking to you too. And your inner children. This is part of your genetic makeup. Helping people break out of the oppressive systems of their own mind. In this incarnation, the one that we're currently in, it's money. I mean, food and water and shelter too, but like a big one is money. In the ancient Egypt, not so much money, but more, food and water and things. I said the source has been different across history. The source has been different throughout history. It doesn't matter if it's money, food, seashells, whatever. It literally can be anything and everything, but it's all rooted in a program of lack. So her little girl looked at me and said, well, how do I help people in this lifetime? The one that we're currently in. And I said, well, let's go back to the carousel. So we're standing there looking at it, and I said, first is getting off the carousel. Knowing that you have choice of, I don't want to subscribe to this anymore. Okay, I see this for what it is. The second is seeing the cycle, understanding what is actually happening. That there isn't a lack of resources. That is oppressive ideologies. And we're going to get into how that is manifested into reality. So also understanding that it started in childhood. For me, for her, for you. Okay, this has been a program that has been running for the entirety of our lives. I said, do you see that little girl right there? And we were looking at the carousel, and there was just a young child, and she was walking around kind of looking confused. I said, she's ready to get off the carousel. Let's go help her. So her inner child went to go walk up to this little girl and said, do you want to come have fun with me? And the little girl said, this is fun. Looking at the carousel, even though in her soul she knew it wasn't. And her inner child, my client, said, why do you think it's fun? And the little girl said, because all my family and friends are here on the carousel. And that's representative of generational and societal trauma, programming, and environmental circumstances. Everybody kind of experiencing the same thing together. The little girl said, why don't you try my magic glasses on? The ones that we got earlier. And when the little girl put them on and saw everyone on the carousel, she said, why does everyone look so sad and tired? She was not able to perceive that before. She thought everyone was happy, but they really weren't. And my client's inner child said, because they don't know how the ride works. Everyone is focused on external circumstances and lack, i.e. money, perceived money. Okay, remember, it doesn't matter what the resource is, just right now it's money. They don't know how to get off the carousel, so they're stuck. What they need to focus on is their self-concept and focusing within, abundance within. That is how you get off the ride. Then that little girl said, I don't want to go have fun without them, her family members and friends. And my client's inner child said, they aren't ready to get off the ride yet. They think that they are still having fun. What the greater symbolism here is, if we are experiencing a lack, it is a lot easier to focus on external circumstances causing that. Whether that is people or systems or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that's not real, but if you stay in that patterning loop, you'll be there forever. There is a way to exit the ride, but you've got to go on an internal system restructure in order to interact with reality differently and get out of those places and spaces. Like it's not going to serve you to focus on external circumstances. And I'm not saying that's you, because we're going to talk about how this is actually affecting other people out in reality. You know that. You know how it works. So my client's inner child said, do you know what would really help them, the people on the carousel? You going and having fun and then coming back and showing them what real fun is. And the little girl said, well, how do I do that? And she said, loving yourself, taking care of yourself, resting, relaxing, following your dreams and heart's desires, expressing yourself, and doing things you enjoy. When you show them that it is possible, the people on the carousel, you will help them start on a new adventure too. Then they will go out and do that for others. And her higher self came in and said, a way to take this farther is stepping outside of the norm, homogenized reality where everybody's just doing the same thing, giving yourself permission to be wildly successful so you can come back and help others. We are not on the carousel anymore. Endless loops of hustle and grind for achievements that aren't even fulfilling. This is like people that are staying at jobs for 40 years and saying, well, I've invested so much time and energy, but being miserable the whole entire time. Like, you actually don't have to do that. The fear that her inner children have been holding on to, that have not created the space for her to get to new income levels or success in life, is because they were afraid that they were going to lose their family members or friends because they're being condescending, or perceived judgments, or, oh, you just live in Delulu land, or you're just lucky, that's why all these things happen for you. No, actually, it's because I went on a very deep healing process where I had to reprogram my entire subconscious and my mindset and learn to love myself and hold boundaries and say no and be different, even with the fear of judgments and persecution. And I kept on blazing my own trail. And that's why I am experiencing so much fun and magic and whimsy in life, and peace and groundedness and centeredness, because I was willing to step outside of the norm and off of that carousel ride, even if nobody else was ready or willing to. After all of that alchemization and transmutation, we have a natural drive to go get more people off the carousel. But it doesn't serve you or anyone else for you to stay stuck on it because you don't want to be perceived as better than somebody else or condescending. I said the best plan of action here is to have your inner children carry around those magic glasses that helps them see the reality of things. And when you are conversating with other people, we're going to focus our attention on the inner children within people who are ready to get off of that ride, that want to go on a new one, that are kind of looking around like, I think that I have been lied to. I don't think this is how reality is supposed to work. Okay, nobody is looking like they are happy. Okay, I need to be doing something else. we're going to go reach out to those inner children and help them, because not everybody's ready to get off the ride. It's not their fault. Okay, this is just programming. Like in trauma and oppressive systems. But there are a lot of people who are on the precipice of liberation, but they're not going to be able to be liberated if there's not somebody there to receive them in the first place. And that's where you come in. Where you say, you know what? I'm going to step out of normalized society and do things my way, and also be wildly successful at it, so I can show you how to do it too. Another understanding that we need to have is all of the lack that everyone is experiencing out here is because everyone is subscribing to that. There's not actually a lack of resources, but we're experiencing that on the 3D plane because that is the internal structural system that everyone is running because of the carousel and then it being taught through the generational lines. So you over here doing your own thing might seem like an anomaly to a lot of people, like, oh, you're just lucky. But the more people who get off of the carousel and then come back to help the others and say, hey, like, that's not actually how it works. If we go internally and we focus on all those things that we mentioned beforehand, you in your own individual realm will start to see differences in your money, finances, success, all these different things. And then everybody shifts their own personal realities. Now everybody's experiencing prosperity, abundance, and wealth, but you have to give yourself permission to raise to new levels in the things that you are doing in life, so that you can come back and teach other people how to have fun and how to get on a different ride. I would love to hear in the comments if this shifted your perspectives, if it's a message that your inner children needed to hear. If you would like your own personalized session where I go in and meet with your inner children and create this magical adventure so we can bridge into a new relationship for you with money and new income levels, I do offer sessions called New Income Levels. You can find them in my bio. You can share a comment, reach out to me via email or DM me. I would also love to hear your biggest takeaways. I love you so much, and I'm wishing you the absolutely most magically abundant day.